you're on the ground and the ground is just collecting that water. This sucks because sometimes you're gonna wake up in a motherfucking pool of water. What's up, everybody? Let's do some tent talk today. Triple T. This is gonna be 5 reasons why sleeping in a tent sucks. And before I get into the list, let me just say a couple disclaimers here. I primarily sleep in my hammock, if I'm gonna be honest, but I have spent a decent amount of nights in a tent while backpacking as well. And I actually made another video where I talk about like the 5 reasons why hammock camping sucks, which you should go watch right now. Before I get into too much. First of all, I know that not all tents are created equal, so some of these downsides I'm about to highlight might not apply to your specific tent. So I'm not saying that every single tent ever made has all of these downsides. I'm gonna have to generalize a little bit here. That's just kind of what happens in these stupid fucking videos. And the second thing is that these 5 things are just based off of my personal experience. I get people all the time that comment on my videos that are like, yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, dude. Like, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, of course it's obviously my opinion. It's like my video. So yeah, this is based off of my experience only. Your experience might be different. If that's the case, that's great. I celebrate that. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Tell me what kind of tent you have. Tell me if your tent like negates one of these downsides, something like that. Let's have a discussion. Let's have some fun, and let's get into reason number 1 why sleeping in a tent sucks. Let's get the obvious one out of the way right at the beginning here. In order to sleep comfortably in a tent while you're backpacking, you have to find a flat spot to set that shit up. And that's not always possible depending on where you're hiking and where you end up having to camp that night. This was honestly the first thing that came to mind when I was trying to plan this video. And maybe that's just the hammocker in me like coming out. Obviously in a hammock you don't need flat ground necessarily, but that is just a huge inconvenience sometimes. I know some places are completely flat and it's not a problem, so I'm not saying every single place ever has this problem, but especially up here in the Northeast or just anywhere in the Appalachian Mountains, really, along the Appalachian Trail, for instance, it can be challenging to find a completely flat spot to set up your tent. Obviously, no one's gonna like try to set up their tent on like a freaking incline like that, but even in legitimate established tent sites I've seen, there's not always a perfectly flat spot. There might be a clearing, there might be an obvious spot to go, but when you walk up, turns out there's a little bit of a dip in the ground, and that's kind of gonna throw off your lay. If you're on just even a little bit of a decline, you might wake up completely smushed in the back of your tent. I mean, that's probably an exaggeration, but you guys get what I'm saying here. Finding flat ground is a bitch sometimes when you're sleeping in a tent. So these next 2 items both have to do with rain. Reason number 2 why backpacking with a tent, sleeping in a tent sucks is because when it rains and you're in a tent, you're on the ground and the ground is just collecting that water. This sucks because sometimes you're gonna wake up in a motherfucking pool of water. You're gonna wake up in a giant puddle. Maybe it even seeps into your tent. Hopefully not if the tent is built properly. But either way, that really sucks. It really sucks to be sleeping on the ground in a tent when everything around you, the ground around you, is just soaked with water. Now, can this be avoided by just being really good at selecting a campsite? Yes, it can. I'm honestly not a pro at that, so I don't really want to speak to that too much, but for your average just hiker dude like me, or even for a beginner hiker, certainly, it can be kind of difficult to figure out where a good spot to set up your tent is going to be when it's raining. And honestly, an even bigger problem is just that sometimes you don't have very many options. Again, this goes back to my first point about not always having a perfectly flat spot to set your tent up at. Sometimes the only viable place to set your tent up is going to be in a spot that's going to collect a lot of water and kind of pool up when it rains. And so that's just like an inherent downside of tent camping. I don't know, maybe there's some way to get around it that I just don't know about. But again, as a primarily hammock camper, this is one that really gets to me, and it was an obvious number 2 for this list. Now, like I said, number 3 also has to do with rain, so let me get into that now. Setting up a tent when it's raining really sucks, let's be honest. The reason this sucks is because your traditional double wall tent, you know, the the inside mesh, the rain fly, the pole. You guys know what a tent is. With those types of tents, you usually have to set up the interior part of the tent, the actual tent body, with the poles before you put the rain fly on. So if it's pouring rain, you literally have to set up the tent without the rain fly on before you can put it over. And even if you're super quick, even if you're super good at it, you're probably still gonna get at least a little bit of water in there. And if you're a fucking idiot like I am, you're probably gonna get a ton of water in there, and it's really gonna suck. Now, I know that not all tents have this problem. I feel like a single wall tent, which I've actually never used before, might not have this problem because the exterior, the entire body is just the tent, so you just gotta set it up. But for a lot of tents, this is a huge issue. So honestly, if you have a solution or like a good way to deal with this problem, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Definitely let me know, try to prove me wrong. If it's really not that big a deal and I just don't know about something, then yeah, let me know, please. So this next reason why sleeping in a tent sucks is because of condensation. Now again, I know it depends on each specific tent. Some tents are gonna be worse than others, like I get that, but condensation is not pleasant. I just feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of a tent, because tent's supposed to keep you dry, but here I am waking up in the morning and my breathing has caused all this condensation inside the tent, and that shit's just dripping down every single time I accidentally rub up against the side of the tent. I know you can just kind of open the vents and try to get like a bunch of airflow through there, but that's not always possible, especially if it's cold or if it's buggy. Like, you don't want that shit to just be like hanging open like that. When sleeping in my hammock, I have noticed a little bit of condensation underneath my sleeping pad sometimes, but it's never to the point where like I'm actually getting like wet or even noticing it until I get outside of the hammock. And I've just noticed that in tents, condensation is a lot worse. I've heard that double wall tents tend to have better airflow and less condensation than single wall tents, like a Z-Packs duplex, for instance. I've never slept in a single wall tent, so I can't speak to that personally, but that's something I have heard. If you have experience with that, let me know in the comments. Just again, something to keep in mind, condensation is likely going to occur in your tent, and if that really bugs you out, then yeah, just keep that in mind. Maybe a hammock would be a better choice. So I'm deciding on the fly here. I'm actually gonna have 6 items in this video. I'm gonna have a bonus item coming up in just a second, but reason number 5 that sleeping in a tent sucks is because of the pole problem. So this was one I didn't really think of off the top of my head, but when I was talking to some friends the other day about problems with hammocks, I was basically trying to rip off their answers for this video. If I'm just gonna say it. My good friend Mullet Mike brought up a really good point, and that is carrying tent poles in your pack can be pretty awkward sometimes, just because they're like long and pointy, haha, and they just don't really fit like with backpacking gear well, I feel like. And now I know that some tents, again going back to the duplex, I think can be set up with your trekking pole, so obviously I'm not talking about those, but for most like normal backpacking tents, there's going to be tent poles, and they're just like kind of not like difficult to pack, like you can figure it out, but they're just a little bit of a pain in the ass to pack, if you know what I mean. The way that I've dealt with this problem so far has just been to put them on the side of my ULA CDT backpack here. I've had this for like 6 years. I don't know why I had to think about the name of the backpack. And you know, that holds it okay, but it's still kind of awkward because then my water bottle is here too, and so like I'm reaching in to get my water bottle and I'm grabbing my tent poles. So friggin' let me know how you carry your awkwardly shaped tent poles in the comments below. And with that said, let's go into this bonus item. Reason number 6, I lied in the title, that's right, apparently. Reason number 6 why sleeping in a hammock sucks. Wait, no. Tent. Sleeping in a tent sucks. I really hope I haven't been saying hammock this whole video, and I'm gonna look back when I'm editing and be like, F***, I'm such an idiot. So I guess speaking of hammocks, this bonus 6th item is directly related to my experience both sleeping in a hammock and sleeping in a tent. I've noticed that sleeping in a tent tends to be much dirtier than sleeping in a hammock. Now, this is probably something you haven't noticed if you've never slept in a hammock before, or if you're just a clean person, I guess, but whenever I sleep in a tent, no matter how hard I try, maybe I'm just stupid, but I always end up dragging a bunch of dirt inside with me. Now, maybe that's because I bring some of my gear inside. Maybe that's because when you like scoot into the tent, you kind of like just have some dirt on your butt or something. I don't really know why, but I just never really seem to have this problem in my hammock. Like, you know when you take your tent down and you go to like shake it out and there's just like a bunch of like dirt all over the place? My hammock always just felt much cleaner. I never really got a bunch of dirt in there. And it's not like the end of the world. This isn't like a reason to never buy a tent or whatever, but like it is just slightly inconvenient, I guess, slightly annoying. So I just wanted to throw that in as a bonus item. So with that said, I've said this like 5 times in the video, but leave a comment. Seriously, let me know what you think of this list. If you think I'm a dumb millennial soy boy or something stupid like that, you can say that. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, subscribe, hit like, smash subscribe, like, hit the comment, subscribe, like. Thanks for watching.